It's past midnight, you're tired, your eyes sting, your shoulders ache, your body has been begging for rest since 9 p.m., and yet you're still awake, scrolling, snacking, replaying conversations, maybe even working, maybe doing nothing at all. And somewhere inside you, a quiet voice says, "Go to bed." But you don't. You delay, you resist, you sabotage. This is the paradox of exhaustion, wanting sleep with your whole being, but still pushing it away. Why? Why do we avoid the very thing that could heal us? Why do we turn away from rest when we're drowning in fatigue? This isn't just about poor discipline or bad habits. It runs deeper than that. It's not a time management issue. It's an emotional one, a nervous system one, a worthiness one. Because sleep isn't just a physical act, it's an act of surrender, of safety, of trust. And if your body doesn't feel safe, if your mind doesn't feel worthy, if your emotions are still raw and spinning, no amount of logic will get you under the covers in peace. That's what this episode is about. Not fixing your sleep routine, but understanding why your system resists rest even when it desperately needs it. We'll explore how childhood patterns, trauma responses, internalized pressure, and unresolved emotions all show up at bedtime in the form of one more show, one more snack, one more scroll. Not because we're lazy, but because sleep requires a level of softness that many of us were never taught how to allow. Let's begin with the truth most people don't admit out loud. Sometimes it's easier to stay tired. There's a strange comfort in exhaustion. It gives us a reason to avoid. It numbs emotion. It lowers expectations. It justifies disengagement. When you're always tired, no one expects you to be fully present, not even yourself. You can coast, you can excuse, you can disappear without having to explain. But underneath that is fear. Fear of what might come up in the quiet, fear of dreams that still ache, fear of disappointment or failure or just being. Because rest removes distractions. It removes noise. And without the armor of doing, we're left with ourselves, our thoughts, our unmet needs, our unhealed parts. For many, sleep isn't just hard, it's confronting. So the delay isn't irrational, it's protective. When someone stays up way too late night after night, it's not because they love being tired. It's because tiredness has become a shield, a way to avoid stillness. Because stillness feels like exposure. This is especially true for people who grew up in chaos, for those whose childhood beds weren't safe, or whose homes were never quiet, or whose emotions were never held gently. For them, nighttime doesn't equal peace, it equals hypervigilance. And even decades later, their bodies remember. So here's the invitation. If this is you, don't judge the sabotage, get curious about it. Ask, what am I avoiding by staying awake? What emotions am I delaying? What parts of me feel unsafe to meet? And most importantly, what would I need to feel safe enough to rest? That's where the healing starts. Not in a perfect routine, not in 8 hours of sleep, but in recognizing that resistance is rooted in protection, and protection comes from pain, and pain deserves compassion, not control, not shame, but gentleness. Because once your body knows it's safe, really safe, rest becomes possible. Not forced, not earned, but allowed. The psychology of bedtime avoidance, what your late-night habits are trying to tell you. We tend to think of bedtime habits as harmless routines. Scrolling through social media, watching one more episode, rearranging the closet, reading comment sections we don't even care about. Sometimes even cleaning the kitchen obsessively at 1 a.m. On the surface, these look like ordinary distractions, but beneath them, there's a story, one your nervous system is trying to tell you, because avoidance is never random. It's a language. And bedtime is when that language speaks the loudest. When someone scrolls endlessly at night, it's not just about entertainment. It's a way to numb, to disconnect, to delay the intimacy of silence. Because in silence, your thoughts get louder. And if those thoughts are painful, shameful, or unresolved, your mind will find a way to keep the volume down, even if it costs you rest. When someone binges show after show long past fatigue, it might look like indulgence, but it's often about control. During the day, they may feel powerless, micromanaged, constantly giving to others. But at night, that's their time, their escape, their domain. Even if it sabotages their sleep, it feels like freedom because no one is taking it from them. Some people tidy, sort, organize, not because they're disciplined, but because internal chaos needs an external outlet. They can't clean up the mess inside, so they fold laundry at 2 a.m. They wipe down counters that are already spotless. They get things done, not because they're efficient, but because rest feels unfamiliar. Or worse, unsafe. And then there are those who stay up for no reason they can name. They're not doing anything productive. They're not even enjoying the distraction. They're just stuck. Stuck in inertia. In the space between tired and shut down. The body is ready for sleep, but the heart is heavy. And sleep would mean facing a tomorrow they don't feel ready for. All of these patterns, scrolling, binging, cleaning, spacing out, they're messengers. They point to a deeper truth. You're not avoiding sleep. You're avoiding what sleep requires of you. Surrender, stillness, trust. And if those feel foreign, even threatening, your system will do everything it can to stay awake. Not to punish you, but to protect you. So how do we respond? Not with judgment. That only adds fuel to the shame. Not with more discipline. That just creates another layer of performance. We respond with curiosity, with compassion, with the simple question, what am I trying not to feel right now? And then here's the hard part. We feel it. Not all at once, not deeply, just a little. Just enough to prove that the feeling won't destroy us. Maybe it's grief, maybe it's anger, maybe it's the ache of loneliness you've ignored all day. Whatever it is, naming it gently can soften the grip of avoidance. And once you name it, you can tend to it. You can write it out, cry it out, breathe through it. You can wrap yourself in a blanket, not as an escape, but as comfort for the part of you that's been carrying too much. Because that's really what bedtime avoidance is. An unmet emotional need dressed up as a bad habit. And when you meet the need, the habit starts to lose its power. You don't have to fix everything tonight. You don't have to fall asleep perfectly. You just have to be a little more honest with yourself than you were yesterday. That's enough. That's healing. That's rest. The hidden role of guilt in sleepless nights. Why you feel you don't deserve to rest. Guilt doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just lingers. Quiet, constant, and almost invisible until the lights go out. You've done your best today, or maybe not. Maybe you struggled. Maybe you let things slip. Either way, the moment your head hits the pillow, something inside you starts measuring, counting, judging. Not how tired you are, but whether you've done enough to earn the right to rest. And if the answer in your own mind is no, sleep becomes distant. Not because your body won't allow it, but because your conscience won't. This is what makes guilt so deceptive. It dresses itself as responsibility, as motivation, even as morality. But at night, guilt doesn't help you grow. It only keeps you awake. And for many people, this guilt isn't even about real failures. It's about internalized pressure. To be better, to do more, to not waste time, to make the most of every minute. Rest becomes indulgent. Self-care becomes selfish. Sleep becomes something to deserve. And if you don't meet the invisible quota you've set for yourself that day, rest becomes punishment instead of comfort. Where does that come from? Most often, it's childhood. Homes where praise only came with performance, where being lazy was the worst thing you could be, where relaxation was framed as weakness or wasted time. Maybe your parents never stopped working, or maybe they criticized you when you did. Maybe love felt conditional, not given freely, but earned with output. Over time, you absorbed the rule. If you're not producing, you're not enough. If you're not hustling, you're falling behind. And now, years later, you live by it without even knowing. The day ends, but the pressure doesn't. You lay down, but your mind keeps running. You want rest, but guilt says, not yet, not until you've proven your worth. And so sleep becomes one more thing you have to justify. That's the trap, that's the lie. Because sleep is not a luxury, it's not a reward, it's not a signal of laziness or failure. Sleep is a biological need. It is the foundation of emotional regulation, mental clarity, physical health, and yes, even productivity. Denying it doesn't make you stronger. It just makes you more exhausted, more reactive, and eventually more broken down. But breaking the cycle doesn't start with a new bedtime routine. It starts with truth. It starts with recognizing that guilt is not a reliable voice. That inner critic you trust so much is just echoing old rules, not reality. You are not unworthy because you had an unproductive day. You are not less valuable because you rested. You are not selfish for stopping. You are human, and humans need sleep. So the next time guilt whispers at night, try whispering back. I don't need to earn rest. I need it to survive. My value doesn't depend on how much I accomplished today. Rest is not weakness. It's what makes strength possible. Over time, those new truths sink in. Not all at once, but slowly. And when they do, you'll notice the guilt start to fade. You'll notice your body releasing, your chest softening, your thoughts quieting. You'll notice sleep arriving, not as a stolen pleasure, but as something rightfully yours. And for maybe the first time in years, you'll believe it. Emotional avoidance and nighttime numbing. When sleep is safer to postpone than to feel, there's a moment, usually sometime after midnight, when everything gets quiet. The world slows down, the distractions fade, and all that's left is you. Just you and whatever's still unspoken, unprocessed, unresolved. And if you're like many people, this is when it gets uncomfortable. Not because something bad is happening, but because something true is rising to the surface. Sadness, loneliness, disappointment, longing. All the emotions you didn't have time or space to feel during the day come knocking at your door. And sleep? Sleep requires you to open that door. But instead, you keep it shut. You turn on another video. You scroll a little more. You find something, anything, to numb the rising tide. This isn't weakness. This isn't failure. This is protection. Your nervous system is trying to help you survive emotions that once overwhelmed you. For some people, silence was never safe. Being still meant being vulnerable. Being alone meant danger. So your body learned to stay busy, distracted, engaged, not because it liked stimulation, but because it feared what stillness might bring. That's why the hour before sleep feels so loud. It's the only time of day when your defense is lower and the parts of you you've kept quiet all day finally get airtime. And they don't whisper, they press in. The guilt, the grief, the fear of being unwanted, the memory you buried, the words you never said. It all surfaces like steam rising off a pot that's been simmering too long. And instead of letting it rise and pass, you slam the lid back down. Not now. Not tonight. So you grab your phone. You fill your ears with noise. You find something to keep your eyes moving so your heart doesn't have to feel. But underneath that resistance is a truth your body already knows. You're not actually afraid of sleep. You're afraid of what sleep asks you to feel before it comes. Emotional avoidance is not laziness. It's not immaturity. It's a learned survival response. If you grew up in an environment where your feelings weren't welcome, where you were told to be strong, to be quiet, to be good, then you likely internalize the message that feeling deeply is dangerous. That sadness is weakness. That anger is unacceptable. That vulnerability will get you hurt. So now, as an adult, you keep yourself one step ahead of emotion, even when it means sacrificing rest. You stay awake not because you want to, but because being tired feels safer than being open. And that choice, night after night, wears you down. Slowly, quietly, deeply. But here's the thing, feelings don't disappear when you avoid them. They accumulate, they wait, they turn into tension, headaches, anxiety, shallow breath, stomach knots, and of course, insomnia. The more you numb, the louder your body has to speak, until you either listen or break. So what's the way through? Not by forcing emotion to surface all at once. That's overwhelming. The way through is gentler. It starts with creating small pockets of safety where you can begin to feel again. Just a little. Maybe you sit quietly with your hand over your heart and say, I don't know what I'm feeling right now, but I'm here for it. Maybe you breathe deeply and ask, what's under this restlessness? Maybe you cry for a minute or journal a few messy thoughts. You don't have to resolve it all. You just have to make room for it to exist. Because when your body learns that it's safe to feel, it stops needing to protect you through distraction. When your emotions are allowed, not judged, not feared, your system softens. And when it softens, sleep becomes not just possible, but natural. This is how healing begins. Not by chasing sleep harder, but by letting your feelings come home. And once they're no longer banging at the door, you'll find, almost surprisingly, that you can finally rest. Not because everything is fixed, but because you're no longer running. The fear of vulnerability in sleep, letting go when control feels safer. Falling asleep is often described as letting go. Letting go of the day, letting go of your thoughts, letting go of control. And for some people, that simple act, letting go, is terrifying. Not because they don't want sleep, but because surrender feels too risky. Vulnerability feels unsafe. So they stay awake, not out of preference, but out of protection. Think about it. Sleep is the only time you are completely unguarded. Eyes closed, awareness off, body relaxed, defenses down. In that space, you're no longer performing, managing, fixing, or controlling. You're just still. And for many, stillness equals exposure. Exposure to emotions, exposure to memory, exposure to what might happen if they're not constantly watching, managing, predicting. So they hold on. Even in bed, their shoulders stay tense, their jaw stays tight, their mind races. They hover between wake and sleep like a soldier in a foxhole, never fully shutting down, never fully at ease. And the world sees this as insomnia. But what it really is hypervigilance. A nervous system trained to stay alert, even in rest, because somewhere along the way it learned that letting go meant being unsafe. This fear of vulnerability in sleep often traces back to moments when being unguarded led to pain. Maybe it was a childhood marked by unpredictability, where you never knew if things would be calm or chaotic. Maybe you had to grow up too fast, always watching, always ready, always bracing for the next hit. Maybe trust was broken by someone close or by life itself. And even though your adult mind says it's safe now, your body remembers otherwise. So how do we reteach the body what the mind alone can't convince? We start small. We don't force sleep. We build trust. And we do that by creating moments of micro-surrender throughout the day. One long exhale, one unclenched fist, one pause where you let yourself feel instead of fix. Over time, these become signals, safety cues, that tell your nervous system it doesn't have to stay on guard all the time. Then, as night comes, you layer in practices that don't demand instant vulnerability, but invite it gently. A warm bath, a weighted blanket, a soft light, a grounding phrase like, "It's okay to rest now," or "I am safe enough to let go tonight." You might place a hand on your chest and feel your breath, not to control it, but to accompany it. To say, "I'm here, I'm listening, you're not alone." And when the fear of losing control rises, because it will, you don't resist it, you witness it. You remind yourself, letting go doesn't mean I'm weak, it means I'm healing. You remind yourself that sleep is not surrender to danger, it's surrender to safety. And safety, for many of us, is something we have to learn how to feel, not just intellectually, but physically. This is not a quick fix. But over time, as your body learns that nothing bad happens when it rests, that it doesn't always have to be on, something shifts. The need to control softens. The fear of stillness lessens, and sleep begins to come, not as a battle, but as a return. To softness, to trust, to the version of you that doesn't have to hold everything all the time. And maybe for the first time in a long time, you'll exhale fully. You'll sink in. You'll sleep. Not because you stopped being afraid, but because you finally felt safe enough to stop holding on. Building micro moments of safety, practices that help the nervous system unclench before sleep. Let's be honest, most people don't need another sleep hack. They've tried them all. No screens after 9 p.m., melatonin, magnesium, lavender oil, 4 to 7-8 breathing, and still, they lay awake. Because the issue isn't just the habit, it's the state of the nervous system. And that system, if it's been stuck in overdrive for years, doesn't respond well to sudden shutdown. It needs to be invited out of survival mode, slowly, gently, and without pressure. That's where micro moments of safety come in. Not full routines, not perfect habits, just tiny cues to your body that say, "It's okay now, you can soften." It starts earlier than you think. Sleep doesn't begin at bedtime. It begins the moment you stop fighting your own needs. So sometime in the evening, maybe after dinner, maybe after the kids go to bed, take one full breath. Not a forced deep breath. Just one intentional inhale that you actually notice. Let it out slowly. And with it, let go of the need to rush. That's one moment. Later, you sit on the couch. Instead of grabbing your phone, you put a warm cup of tea in your hands. You feel the warmth. You notice the scent. You don't make it a mindfulness exercise. You just let it be comforting. That's another moment. Maybe you're brushing your teeth, and instead of zoning out, you look at yourself in the mirror. You place a hand on your chest, not dramatically, just gently. You say to your reflection, "We made it through the day." That's enough. Another moment. These tiny acts matter, because they're not about fixing. They're about reminding your body that you're here now, that you're listening, that safety isn't always in control, sometimes it's in presence. Then, as you enter your nighttime space, make it a sanctuary, not a command center. Dim the lights, lower the noise, Put something soft on your bed, a blanket, a scent, a texture that your body associates with calm. You're not tricking your brain, you're training your nervous system. You're saying, this space is different. This space is for softening. You can also create rituals, not rigid routines, but things that feel kind. Maybe you light a candle and blow it out slowly, like signaling to your system, the day is over now. Maybe you say a phrase quietly just to yourself, like, I am safe here, or it's okay to rest. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to feel yours. If you're someone who feels emotionally activated at night, maybe by thoughts, worries, or emotions, keep a small notebook nearby. Not for journaling the right way, but just to offload. One sentence, I felt unseen today, or I'm afraid I messed things up, or even just, I'm overwhelmed. The goal isn't clarity, it's release. You don't need to solve anything to sleep. You just need to stop holding everything alone. And if your body feels wired, tense shoulders, jittery legs, shallow breath, don't try to force relaxation. Instead, offer grounding. Try placing your feet flat on the floor and pressing them down for 10 seconds. Feel the contact. Feel the support. Tell yourself, I don't have to float tonight. I can be held. This isn't woo-woo. This is nervous system science, using the body to signal safety. One of the most powerful moments of safety, though, comes in how you talk to yourself, especially when sleep doesn't come easily. Instead of, I'm going to be a mess tomorrow, you try, it's okay. My body's trying to protect me. I'll get rest when it's ready. Instead of, why can't I just sleep? You try, I'm allowed to rest, even if it takes time. Self-talk isn't just mental, it shapes your physiology. When your inner voice softens, your body follows. This isn't about doing all the things. It's about doing a few things with intention and letting them become anchors, not pressure points. Because what your body truly wants at night isn't productivity or perfection. It wants to feel safe enough to let go. And safety isn't created by force. It's created by presence, by kindness, by choice. So tonight, you don't need a miracle. You need a moment, one breath, one pause, one act of gentleness. That's where sleep begins. The quiet trauma of sleep, how early life experiences shape our nighttime struggles. Some people can't fall asleep because of caffeine, some because of screens, some because of the pace of life. But for many, the reason runs deeper, into the quiet spaces of their past, into the moments they barely remember, but their bodies never forgot. Because sleep, for all its physical mechanisms, is ultimately a matter of safety. And if your earliest memories are not rooted in safety, sleep will always feel like something to fight for, rather than fall into. As children, we learn about the world not just through words, but through patterns, through tone of voice, through the rhythm of connection and rupture, through how we were held or weren't, through how conflict was resolved or avoided. A child who grows up in chaos doesn't learn that rest is allowed. They learn that rest is dangerous, because anything could happen while you're not watching. A child whose parent yells behind closed doors doesn't learn that silence is peaceful. They learn that silence is what comes before the storm. Maybe bedtime in your house wasn't soft. Maybe it was lonely. Maybe no one read you a story. Maybe they yelled at you to go to bed as if sleep was something to be enforced, not invited. Or maybe the house got more tense at night, the air thick with unspoken conflict, the weight of unmet needs. So you stayed awake, quietly, instinctively, because being alert was safer than being unconscious. And maybe now, decades later, your body still does the same. You can't name the reason, You've tried the sleep tips, you've changed your mattress, you drink the tea, but your body still resists. And it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because something happened to you, and sleep became entangled with fear. This is what we call quiet trauma. Not the kind that headlines a story, but the kind that lingers in muscles, in breath, in habits. The kind that says, if I close my eyes, I might miss something. Or worse, if I let go, no one will catch me. This wiring is not your fault. It was formed before you had language, before you could make sense of what was happening. But now as an adult, you have something you didn't have then, awareness. And awareness is the first step toward repair. Because you don't need to remember the exact events to start healing. Your body already knows what it needs, what it didn't get, what it's still craving, and sometimes what it's craving is permission. To rest without watching the door. To soften without earning it. To sleep without proving anything. That's why your bedtime environment matters. Not because it's aesthetic, but because it's an opportunity to rewire, to offer your body what it never got. Maybe that means wrapping yourself in something soft, not for comfort alone, but as a way of saying you're not exposed anymore. Maybe it means playing soft music, not just for ambiance, but because silence once meant tension, and now you're creating something new. Maybe it means whispering something your inner child never heard. You're safe now. I'm here. You can rest. These aren't hacks. These are reparations. You're not just preparing for sleep. You're reparenting the part of you that learned sleep was scary. You're holding space for the child who stayed up just in case. And now you're telling them, not with words, but with presence, that they no longer have to. This doesn't erase the past, but it changes the present. And sleep, over time, becomes less of a battleground and more of a homecoming. A place where you are no longer hiding from danger, but being received by rest. This is the deeper work. This is the real work. And it's worth every breath. If you're still here, still listening, I want you to know something. Your inability to sleep is not a personal failure. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're broken. It's not even because you think too much. It's because your body has been carrying stories that no one ever helped you hold. And somewhere along the way you learned that sleep, the simple, human, beautiful act of surrender, wasn't safe. But maybe tonight, it can be. Maybe you don't have to fix it all. Maybe you just need to give yourself permission to stop trying, to stop pushing, to stop proving, to rest, not because you've earned it, but because you exist. And existence alone is enough. So before you go, I want to invite you right now to do one thing, one gentle thing. Place your hand over your heart. Let your shoulders drop. Close your eyes if that feels okay, and whisper to yourself, even if only in your mind, it's okay. I'm here. I'm safe enough to rest. Breathe that in. Let that truth land. And if sleep comes tonight, welcome it like an old friend. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. You're still healing. You're still worthy. You're still enough. If this episode spoke to something deep inside you, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to this series. Leave a review. Share it with someone who also struggles in the quiet of night. You never know who might need to hear the words you just heard. And if you haven't listened to the earlier episodes in the Stress and Sleep series, I encourage you to go back. Each one is a step in the journey, not toward perfect sleep, but toward a more peaceful relationship with yourself. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for choosing gentleness. I'll be back soon with another episode, but for now, rest well, friend. You You are safe here.